Big thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Hello, hope you're doing well. Before we get started, by the way, if my voice sounds kinda raspy or strained at any point during this video, I'm not sick. I just got very distracted before I started recording and I've been doing guitar for an hour, which probably wasn't the best idea right before doing voiceover for a whole video, but it is what it is and I will deal with the consequences of that as this video progresses, I'm sure. Anyway, yeah, hello! It has been a little minute since I have done a video, hasn't it? At least a couple weeks, I think, since my last upload, maybe around a month. And I definitely didn't intend for there to be such a gap there, but it kind of ended up being that right after my last video, a whole handful of things came along all at once that prevented me from doing kind of any video stuff for a little while. I won't bore you guys with all of the nitty-gritty details anyway, but basically I've been doing a bunch of behind-the-scenes work on some currently unreleased projects that I'm very excited about, and then I treated myself to a couple of days off around my birthday, which happened recently. But in between all of that, the main thing that kept me from doing any speed paint stuff was that I actually did so much work in the lead up to last month that I ended up getting a bit of a strain injury in my drawing arm. Which, is not ideal if you do art for a living, as I'm sure you can imagine. But yeah, long story short, I was busy and then I was injured, I took a little bit of time off, and now, I'm still trying to take things easy, but touch wood, my arm is on the mend and I can kinda start getting back into doing stuff again, which is nice because whenever I can't do videos, I always end up missing it really badly, so it is good to be back in the saddle. So today anyway, in the spirit of taking things slow and calm and kind of easing my way back into the swing of video making again, I wanted to do a little bit of a sketchbook session and just share some chilled out drawing time with you guys. I still never know exactly quite how to define this series. It's basically just a space where I allow myself a bit more room to experiment and draw more casually and draw random unaligned stuff that's not really a part of anything else that might be going on my channel. And today, what I wanted to draw, largely because of the time that I had to take off recently due to my arm going funny, is Kiki's Delivery Service. That might indeed seem like quite a random, out-of-the-blue drawing subject, but if you've ever seen that movie, you'll know that it's got one of, at least I think, one of the best depictions of creative burnout and not being physically able to do something that's normally second nature to you. And yeah, I don't know, it's just a movie that I tend to think about quite a lot whenever I'm ill or otherwise incapacitated or just unable to draw for an extended period of time for whatever reason. Yeah, I just kind of end up remembering certain scenes from it and certain things that the characters say in the movie and the emotions they get across. And when you watch any kind of Ghibli film when you're a kid, you're kind of just yeah, this is a cute, fun, magical adventure. I can get behind this, enjoy this is a good time. But then you look back on it or you watch it again when you're a grown up and you're oh, I understand what they were trying to say here now. Okay. It's not even just Ghibli. I remember I had that with I don't know if any of you guys have seen The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, but I watched that movie when I was too young to understand what was actually happening, and it still made me cry. And then I remember watching it a couple years later and I was crying so much more because I got it and I was this is really sad. Anyway, with Kiki's Delivery Service, I think what it might be is that I always end up thinking of the artist character. I can't remember her name, but she's got the red shirt and she goes to a random cabin to draw crows for a few weeks when she's kind of burnt out herself or she needs a break, and I'm just kind of dang, they are living the dream. I wish I could go and hang out with a flock of corvids whenever I'm having burnout. But yeah, as some of you all may be aware, I've also begun to try and learn how to do coloring in Clip Studio recently, kind of get used to the software. So before anybody asks in the comments, that is the program that I'm using for this one. And I actually downloaded some really nice watercolor brushes a few weeks ago, and I just haven't had the chance to play around with them yet. So I decided to give them a go here and try my hand at making a really painty looking, delicate watercolor style artwork, which is not something that I normally dip into at all. And what's more, doing it completely digitally, because as much as I do love the look of it, I cannot use real paint to save my life. But also because, even though they are usually cel-shaded and filled in with more solid color, because that's the way that they need to be animated, Ghibli films like Kiki's Delivery Service have, as you probably well know, just the softest energy. And I really wanted to just see if I could try and mix those kind of vibes into my coloring style, even if it's not actually the kind of coloring that you'd normally see in the movies themselves. So yeah, as you can see, I started out by doing a really rough pose sketch in my actual paper sketchbook before taking a photo of it and pasting it onto my canvas. Then I started doing the inking with my usual Clip Studio preference of the Real G pen. As per usual as well, there were a bunch of shortcuts and custom brushes that I made use of to help make the process a bit faster. Like for the broom, for instance, I made use of a custom rope brush that I use for pictures all the time. It's so handy for filling in detail. And also I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but they have like an outline button that outlines everything on your layer. So I just used like a white brush and gave the layer a black outline, and that made it really, really easy to do the broom stick. For some reason I thought it had a different name for a second, but the actual stick of the broom and the bristles, it made those like really, really quick to fill in. Initially, I was also going to have Gigi, like, yawning and using the bottom of the broom to do a big stretch, but then I remembered that cats are really difficult to draw, and I was here to have a good time, not a hard time, so I made it so that he was just poking his little face out from behind the bristles instead. And then it was coloring time. Like I said, the main goal of this piece was just to have a bit of fun, play around, and try a completely different method of coloring than I usually use. Usually I would make use of the selection tool and the paint bucket to color my artworks really cleanly before going in and painting in more detail and doing the shading and stuff. But as I said, I really wanted to break in those watercolor brushes. So I just dove right in and started applying paint under my line work without really worrying about whether it was going outside of the lines or not, because I knew this piece was going to be a lot blendier and a bit messier than my usual stuff. As you can see, I started off with the skin tone, and I was kind of tentative at first when it came to building up the color because I didn't know quite how sensitive these brushes were going to be when it came to doing the actual color mixing. So Kiki started off looking super duper pale here, but eventually I went in and slowly mixed in more reds and pinks to just warm those tones up a bit. And even just at this point, like having only just gotten started trying to blend the skin tone, doing something more painterly like this was so relaxing. I don't think I mentioned this before, but part of what really sucked when my arm was kind of out of whack last month was that while I was unable to draw, I couldn't stop my thoughts from racing in the direction of like, what if this is it and your arm is broken forever and you never draw again? Ooh. That's not uncommon. That's why I do it in a silly voice, because that's just like a thought that pops up for me whenever anything goes even mildly wrong with my arm or my hands, even in the most like minuscule way. It really wasn't anything that severe. But my point is, after having had such like both a mental and a physical block on drawing for like several weeks and being almost scared to pick up a pen again because I thought that like any amount of drawing might make my arm feel worse. And again, just in case any of you guys are like worried on my behalf or for my health or whatever, all of that like scary kind of talk is just anxiety, and like I'm super used to that. It's all good. Unpleasant in the moment, but like we're here now, it's cool. But yeah, you know, after that little patch of whatever, it felt really nice to just paint. This is probably going to sound like really sappy and sentimental, but it felt like coming home. It was really nice. And I think I've said this in plenty of videos before, but coloring is easily one of my favorite parts of any drawing because, for me at least, it's the point at which the thinking and the figuring out of poses and like the calculations are over, and I can kind of just stop having to focus on doing clean line work and stuff and switch my brain off and listen to a podcast or something. It is basically the closest thing to meditation that I will probably ever achieve. Because I was so no thoughts head empty during the coloring process here though, I don't really remember what my thought process was while working on it. I don't even know if there even was one, really, or if it was all just vibes, but you know, let's be honest, it was probably all just vibes. But I do at least know that I really like how it turned out. I think, you know, working backwards from where it ended up, I think one thing that I decided as I was going along was that all of the lighter colors were fine to go outside the lines a bit because it gave everything that nice, organic, painty kind of feeling that I was going for. But for the darker colors, like Gigi's fur and Kiki's dress and stuff like that, I decided to keep them clean and inside the lines because otherwise their shapes would be lost. Because unlike with the lighter colored areas, you wouldn't be able to see the ink anymore if those dark colors seeped out from underneath it. And yeah, I don't know, I don't think I'm quite adept enough yet at this whole digital watercolor thing to be able to make loose blobs of paint look like characters without having any ink there to define those shapes. Probably a challenge best saved for another day, methinks. So yeah, for the lighter areas anyway, I used an airbrush to tidy up the edges wherever I felt like it was necessary, and then for the darker sections, I employed my default technique of using the magic wand to select and delete anything that went outside the lines. I'm quite keen on how that ended up looking as well, because the paint texture is still there in the coloring, so it kind of gave me that satisfying feeling of like peeling masking tape away from a painting in real life and seeing the clean-cut edges underneath. Big fan of that kind of thing, it's incredibly satisfying, so yeah, very happy with how that looks on this one. Speaking of the paint texture, by the way, you might have already noticed that there was one brush in particular that I used quite a lot on this one, which was like this cool mix of watercolor triangle shapes. I didn't use that one so much to fill in the main bulk of the color, I did that mostly with like a square-edged brush instead. But I definitely had a lot of fun sweeping this triangle brush across the canvas to just add a bit of texture on top of the different areas of the picture. I don't know what it is about it, but somehow it gives everything a much more lively kind of feeling. Maybe because you see those kind of triangle shapes sometimes in anime or even just in real life where there's like stained glass or really clear water or just something shiny like that where light is hitting it and refracting around. I realize that may very well be just a very specific association that only I have in my head, but hopefully you guys can see what I mean. I also used a variety of speckled brushes to add the impression of like paint flicks around the edges of the character here and there, and I colorized the line work with a kind of dark reddy purple brown color to just give it a bit more of a warm tone. Overall, as I say, I am super happy with how this one turned out. I think it ended up having like more of a retro shoujo manga kind of look than anything else. As far as I remember, a lot of the color pages for like Sailor Moon and Cardcaptors had this kind of pale, delicate watercolor aesthetic, so yeah, that's a fun, unexpected visual crossover. I'm quite happy with that. Most of all though, I'm just very happy to be back in the driving seat and working on videos again. Realistically, I know I've not even been away for a very long time, it's just been a couple of weeks, but it just feels like ages when it's because you're not like able to do stuff. So yeah, like I said at the top of the video, I'm going to be trying to take it easy with my next couple of uploads while I get myself back up to 100% strength, but you know me, I do tend to be quite extra with my video concepts, so we'll see how the whole taking it easy thing goes. Thank you very much again for joining me for this video in any case. I hope you had a lovely time hanging out and doing some painting with me today, and if you take anything away from my ramblings here, it is that painting is fun, and if you do a lot of painting, you should probably learn from my mistakes and do more wrist and elbow exercises so that you can keep on painting without having to take an unexpected month-long break. For now anyway, I hope you are all staying as safe, happy, and healthy as you possibly can, and I will see you next time. Thanks once again to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. If you haven't heard of them before, Squarespace are a platform that allows you to create your own fully customizable website. Need to build an online portfolio? You can build your own using the image blocks feature or try out their range of professionally designed templates. Want to open an online store which includes password-protected pages for secret bonus content? They have that covered too. You can even automatically cross-post website content to your social media, post blog updates, and a whole bunch more, all on one handy platform. As you can see, Squarespace is also the platform that Beth from the Shrieking Wizard Co team used to design our official website, so it's a service that I can definitely recommend. If you want to give it a go for yourself, you can access the free trial over at squarespace.com, and once your new website is ready to roll, you can get a 10% discount on your first purchase of a website or domain at squarespace.com/abdillustrates.